If a wolf attacked my child, I would defend my child. If a bear came out of the woods that we live in and attacked my family, I would shelter my family the best that I could.
Now you might be thinking that's a very noble thing to come from Matt Powell. Well, let me just put it into context for you. The wolf or the bear that's attacking his children is just an analogy for the public school system. So in this video, Matt is going to tell us why homeschooling is the better option. Let me know if you agree, whether you agree with his points or you have your own.
I've heard that if you homeschool your children, that they're likely to turn out really weird.
Matt, I think you're going to have to be a bit more specific than simply weird. I mean, if you're on about social issues, then yeah, depending on how homeschooling is done, socializing is less prevalent in homeschooling, so the social aspect is missing most of the time. And that could make someone be considered weird. What I find weird is when it's used as indoctrination, and people start preaching about things that are completely undemonstrated, and claiming a book to be scientifically factual because of homeschooling. That's weird. But hey, that's just my opinion.
Well, in schools, they tell kids that you can become an animal. And some kids believe that they are animals.
I don't know about you guys, but I was never taught that I could become an animal. I could pretend to be one for a play. I would think I was a sheep once, but I couldn't become one. On the other hand, as for being an animal, I mean, we're not fungus or bacteria or any of the other options. So, I mean, we're animals, right? What else could we be?
I was homeschooled.
You know what, Matt? That really doesn't surprise me.
And let me tell you, if you homeschool your children, you help them to avoid all the racism, all of the socialism and fascism that is literally being taught to our students in America today.
Now, I'm not American, so I don't know the American schooling system. I have no idea, I didn't experience it, but I am in the UK. I assume it's somewhat similar. He says about homeschooling to avoid that sort of thing. And isn't fascism an extreme sort of view of authoritarianism? Usually we're like, I don't know, a race better than another, and demonizing an outgroup of, others. An authoritarian like God, or a master race like men are better than women, which is in the Bible. And demonizing another group, like he has said with homosexuals, should be criminalized and executed. I'm so glad to see that Matt has avoided all of this.
I grew up with 4 brothers. We had no sisters. We studied the Abeka curriculum.
The Abeka curriculum takes a biblical literalist approach, denies evolution, and promotes young earth creationism.
And a lot of that in high school was equivalent to that of college textbooks.
Not really, especially when it's not actually preparing you for college, is it? You may say that, but then how are you going to understand what's being spoken about in college if you don't know anything about evolution? Even if you don't believe it to be true or not, or even if it is true or not, you need to know about it in college, depending on what you study. Because it is fine if you disagree with evolution. You are allowed to challenge these things. In fact, it's encouraged because with science, we get evidence for something, we get the idea, and then we try to disprove those ideas. And if we can't, then it becomes a part of what we know. It becomes more knowledge. And if you have more knowledge that goes in the contrary, then feel free to present it and listen to any criticisms that are given to you as well. But remember, you can't change the world by strawmanning your opposition. You're going to actually have to try and, I think it's called steelman the opposition, and then bring it down from there.
So by the time my brothers and I hit college, we were ready to be able to take certain exams, and we were able to study up and master some of these classes.
I tried to find out information on the college Matt Powell may have went to, if he did, but I couldn't find anything, so if you guys know, let me know in the comments below, but I can imagine it's a Christian-based college, probably for biblical literalists too. Or something similar to how Kent Hovind got his doctorate, his fake doctorate. But as I said, I don't know, I couldn't actually find the information on Matt Powell, so I'd be very interested to know what college he went to. Hello, Editing Joe here. I thought I'd just add something extra. Obviously, I said that I couldn't find Matt's college, so instead I decided, when editing this, to try and look at what other people said when they went through college. And I did find some people explaining their experience on it. I'll just read one of the comments here that I found most relating to this video. I'll keep them anonymous though. I went through the entire Abeka curriculum, and I was woefully underprepared for college. I majored in biology, and the intro classes were a lot tougher than they should have been because I had no foundation. People were comparing it to their high school biology classes, but I had literally never heard of anything we were talking about. Their biology course is pure pseudoscience. It's so worthless it should be considered a scam. I teach microbiology at a community college now. Now, please be aware that obviously I was looking for this information, so I'm going to find something like this. I don't particularly understand or know exactly what's in the Abeka curriculum. I just thought it would be a good idea to find what people who have experienced it say about it after entering the real world, which I'm still not sure Matt here has done so.
Because of a strong foundation that was given us by this curriculum. And so if you're looking at homeschooling your kids, the Abeka curriculum is truly phenomenal. They didn't pay me to say that. They don't even know I'm making this video, but I just want to say that's what worked for me. It'll work for your kids, and it'll work for you if you're willing to really apply yourself and learn the material.
Now, for a very short time, I did actually homeschool my own kids. I'll admit that I wasn't very good at it, but quite frankly, it was during the times of COVID, so it was better than me risking them going out there. During that time period, I wasn't comfortable with that. I had the full intentions of sending them back to school when I deemed it a bit more safer. The school was completely happy with me doing that. And during that time period, I asked what they wanted to learn, and they actually did learn from me, even though I'm not a very good teacher, because I focused on what they wanted to learn. My son wanted to learn all about the wonders of space, and my daughter wanted to learn anything and everything she could about animals. Now, those two topics are extremely wonderful things to look into, with amazingly different answers and a wealth of knowledge within that. And with each section you go through, with the more that you answer, the more questions that ensue. This is the pursuit of knowledge and understanding these things. It's amazing, especially when kids are doing it. They ask questions you haven't even thought of. But if I was to use the Abeka curriculum, I would say, God did it. No wonder you're able to master these classes so quickly. On the other hand, my kids are well aware they have the free will to believe what they want to believe, even if it goes against my beliefs. I don't believe in heaven. My son does. And we talk about it in a great way, because we are allowed to have these open conversations. I don't shut him down and say, no, that's not how heaven works, or anything like that, because I don't have a strict guidance on it, on how I should be teaching it. I just don't see why you'd want your kids to go through that. I'd rather my kids learn Lord of the Rings as if it was reality than learn the Bible as being the only source of information, because they'd truly have a greater understanding of the world if they did it that way. Now, at this point, I'd like to be clear that just because people are Christian does not mean that Matt Powell represents them. Matt Powell is a biblical literalist, a fundamentalist. He takes everything in the Bible as it is quite literally. So, as far as I understand, when the Bible says the donkey was given miraculous power to speak to Balaam, Matt Powell would actually believe the donkey genuinely spoke. Not all Christians do that. Most Christians are normal human beings.
Just simply pull your kid aside when they come home from the public school system and ask them what they learned. Ask them how school's going.
You should probably be doing that when your kid comes home from anywhere, really. Not just the public school system. Stop treating knowledge as a threat. It's fine. People are allowed to learn. See, I do this as well. Even when it comes to school, I was teaching my son about Christianity, and I was interested. However, it started turning into my son coming home going, Jesus is the one and only, Jesus is our saviour, and all that sort of stuff. That's when I started to have an issue. They told me they were going on field trips, but they never told me the location was sort of Christian-based. And as I said, I don't mind my kids learning about religion, as long as it's equal. You know, learn about the 5 major religions at least.
And what I would do is try to guide them the best that you can, using God's word as a final authority and also just basic common sense.
Now, you see, I disagree, because especially with common sense, it would have you thinking that the sun goes around the earth. You know, the geocentric model, which is the idea that the sun orbits the earth. Now, generally speaking, we're taught that the earth orbits the sun. And this is what I find about knowledge, because technically that's not true either. All celestial objects will have a barycenter in which we orbit, a centre of mass between the two, or a more complex system. It's actually one way of how we detect exoplanets, by the wobble of the star itself. Anyway, I'm getting too far into it. As for the other part, with God as the final authority, have you read the Bible? I don't think many children would survive if we followed it as a final authority.
I was homeschooled my entire life, and I recommend it. If you're a young one, and you're learning from your mother how to read and how to write, and how to do mathematics, you will automatically develop a respect for that parent.
That respect should already be there before you start homeschooling, because you're not going to teach someone who doesn't respect you. And if it wasn't there before you start teaching them, it won't be there after. The first thing you'd need to build on is that respect.
Are there some bad homeschoolers out there? Absolutely. If you get enough people together doing something, you're going to get some bad people in there.
I agree, but I'm curious. If he understands this concept here, then why did I recently do a video where he was discrediting all atheists just because some people are bad and do bad things?
And of course, there's people that have failed the educational system within the realms of homeschooling. And those people should be called out. They should be made to be accountable to their children. They owe their children that opportunity to learn.
I agree, the people should be held accountable. I am terribly sorry too, Matt, for what's happened to him, as that opportunity to genuinely learn had been taken away from him without his ability to consent. And now that he has the opportunity to learn, he asks all the questions that he should. But when he hears the answers, it just proves that he's incapable of learning when he asks the same questions again and again.
Some people will criticize videos like this, and they'll say, well, Matt, how could you shelter your kids? Don't you want them to learn about the world?
Yeah, exactly. It looks like this is going to be one of those times where he's heard it before, but he doesn't want to learn, so he won't. I wouldn't mind if it was just him, but obviously he's going to do this to his kids, and then his kids will probably do the same to their kids. What I find so strange about it is where he goes next with it.
Well, if a wolf attacked my child, I would defend my child. If a bear came out of the woods that we live in and attacked my family, I would shelter my family the best that I could. Well, they tell kids there's more than two genders. They invite drag queens to come and put on their little shows, their little performances in front of the little ones. Are you going to just sit there and let your son or daughter take in all of that disgusting filth?
That person on screen right now looks awesome. They've got bright orange hair and they've clearly dyed it that way as well. Just in case you don't know, orange is my favorite color. Anyway, back to it. What I think Matt fails to see here is that he is the wolf. He is the bear in the woods that is coming out to attack my children, potentially. You see, my kids are young at the moment, but they are growing up very fast. And I'd rather them have a future where they're safe. Quite frankly, that's pretty much my minimum requirement. I want my children to grow up safe, to live their entire life as safe as possible. As does, I assume, most parents. But what if my children one day grow up and discover that they're gay, or discover that they experience gender dysphoria? To have people making online videos telling others that those people are absolutely disgusting creates a sense of fear in society about those people, in which my children may be one of them. And it's Matt Powell here that's spreading this hatred, spreading this potential violence, that's creating an unsafe environment for them. It's so completely unnecessary. I understand that the videos I make could cause people to not really like Christianity, so I always try to leave at least one disclosure in the video somewhere, stating that the person I'm talking about doesn't represent Christianity as a whole, or Islam as a whole, depending on who I'm looking at. I haven't really looked at any other religions yet. So to answer Matt's question, yes, I do want to protect my children from people like Matt Powell. And what I'm doing with these videos is trying to protect anyone of those groups. Anyone that Matt spreads that fear around. Because as human beings, we should all at least be given equal respect. There are things that get in the way of sort of like a complete equality-based society. However, the one thing we can always do is give equal respect. And that's pretty much it.
Or are you going to step up and be a hero to your child and shield them from propaganda, from misinformation about gender and about their existence?
Yeah, like the misinformation that the word gender is the exact same as the word sex. That would be misinformation. I recently had someone tell me that misinformation was just a buzzword. And in the case that Matt Powell just used it in, yes it is. He provided almost no context and just used it to try and discredit what he considers to be an ideology. But misinformation simply refers to what we currently understand, but someone telling a wrong thing about it. My favourite example is trying to talk about dihydrogen monoxide. Most people don't really know what that is. So you can tell them it's in almost everything. It's in baby food, it's in microwave meals, it's the main component in acid rain, and it causes asphyxiation, which then leads to death. We need to stop this. No one should be consuming it. Just in case you don't know, it's water. So if misinformation has become a massive buzzword now, then I'm sorry, but I still intend to use it as long as I say it accurately. And if I do use it wrongly, then please call me out on it. The last thing I want to do is spread misinformation.
I grew up on a farm, and I learned extremely fast that there's only male and female, because we were taking care of cattle, taking care of horses, taking care of chickens, and helping these animals to be able to have offspring. And I'm telling you, when you see God's creation, you're not going to be convinced that a man could turn into an animal, or that gender is not binary.
Yeah, I mean, that makes somewhat sense, except for the fact that I know people who have grown mushrooms, and, well, some common mushrooms have 17,000 different sexes. Generally, they reproduce asexually, but they can reproduce sexually. And it would be very uncommon for them to find one of them that's exactly the same as the other. Only about 1 in 17,000 chance of them having the same sex. And then there's the film Finding Nemo, where the clownfish Marlin loses his partner, which would have been the alpha female. In this situation in nature, Marlin would have become female. I really think Disney should have made it true to nature and made Marlin slowly progress throughout Finding Dory, at least, into a female. But I could imagine the amount of issues that would cause from people like Matt Powell. And it just makes me laugh when he says stuff like this.
And I'm telling you, when you see God's creation, you're not going to be convinced that a man could turn into an animal, or that gender is not binary.
And I'm telling you, when you see God's creation, you're not going to be convinced that everything is always that simple. You claim your God to be timeless and spaceless and have all these complex things that we simply couldn't understand, and yet you look at his creation and cherry pick the stuff you like and ignore the stuff you don't like and say it's so simple. But yet, only when it suits you is it so simple, but yet when it doesn't suit you, it's extremely complicated and we can never begin to understand.
Of course it's binary. That's how reproduction even works.
Feel free to refer back to my mushroom statement earlier. Obviously, sex is binary, with 17,000 different sexes.
People always say, oh, homeschooling, it's gonna make my kids weird. Well, at least they're not gonna think that men can get pregnant.
I'm not going to say the usual stuff about this. You know, people who identify as male being male. However, I would like to point to the film Junior, where Arnold Schwarzenegger gets pregnant, for no other reason than I just think it's a funny concept. And I love the tagline, nothing is inconceivable. Anyway, don't you also believe that your God can do anything? If your God can do anything, your God can make a man pregnant. So surely you must also believe this. Otherwise your God isn't all-powerful.
In schools, they're teaching kids this. And kids are believing it because they're impressionable. A child is very impressionable.
Yes, we know this. That's why you're promoting homeschooling and recommending the Abeka curriculum.
And you could hurt them. And in the school system, the stuff they're telling the kids, it is hurting them. That's why they're turning out the way that they turn out. I saw a guy just the other day, he thought he's a wolf. I saw a girl a few weeks ago, thought that she was a fish.
I would like to meet people who think they're a wolf. That would be quite funny. I remember people trying to live as animals in the aims to improve science, to understand how the animal lives better by literally taking a step in their own shoes. Or not quite literally, because they don't wear shoes, but you get my point. However, taking it more seriously, I believe the closest thing I know of in relation to what he's saying is lycanthropy, which is kind of similar to the idea of being a wolf. And it's generally not really an acceptable thing to be and requires treatment. I don't really get his point here. They're not teaching kids at school to become animals. They're teaching kids at school that we're part of the primates, so we're already animals. We can't become something we already are. I have no idea with the fish person, though. Maybe they thought they were a mermaid and he's just taken them out of context. There are people who genuinely work as mermaids. But that's all I got. I have no idea.
The public school system of Nazi Germany corrupted so many youth.
Why does he always have to go there? Always to the Nazis? And every single time, it better represents his position than anyone else's he's debating against. Even if I was to take his statement seriously, I've never seen propaganda from the Nazis going, wolf rights are human rights, or fish rights are human rights. I don't get it, but I have seen the propaganda for them, to kill the gays, which is what Matt Powell promotes. I don't understand why he keeps bringing up the Nazis. It's not a good look for him.
And it made them feel like they were really it. They were the generation that was going to set everything straight.
Doesn't every single generation think they're going to be the ones that sets the world straight? Even if people are completely opposed to the next generation and the one after that and the one after that and the one after, they all think they'll be the ones that sets it straight. I don't think a generation has ever, grown up thinking, right, we're going to destroy the planet. Sure, a generation or two have made that happen. They didn't aim to do it, though. They just deemed other priorities more important.
And they ultimately turned into terrorists. A lot of people in the Nazi army killed Jews, they killed Christians, they killed all sorts of people during the Holocaust.
Including the LGBT community. One of these things you agree with the Nazis by stating gay people should be criminalized and executed. I know I've said it a few times, but I'm just making sure Matt's aware of my point here.
And they thought that they were a superior race because they were being taught Darwinian evolution.
Considering we're talking about the American education system here, here's California State University. Was Hitler influenced by Darwinism? Hitler believed in fixed biological types, and thus rejected evolution altogether. Clearly, Hitler simply rejected an essential component of Darwinian theory, the origin of human beings from ape-like ancestors. Oh, look at that, another thing Matt has in common with Hitler.
They believed that we all descended from rats and that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegians were the most evolved.
I couldn't find anything on them believing in evolution at all, or anything about them saying we descended from rats. They dehumanized Jews by calling them vermin, rats, or parasites, but that's the closest I managed to find, which obviously isn't true. And as far as I could find about the Aryan race, it had nothing to do with evolution. It was about being divine and spiritual, to have a pure blood race. You know, like eugenics, which I can see that you're trying to twist into the idea of evolution, which just wasn't the case. Again, he was more relying on a theistic perspective.
My wife actually purchased me this plaque, and it says, "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." Sometimes it might be hard to pull your kids out of a public school system or to have these conversations with them.
Or sometimes it might be hard for you to understand that things are more complex than you think they are, and that, it could be your own worldview that might need addressing, and you're gonna have a rough time dealing with it or understanding it. But it's okay. You can learn to just simply respect human beings.
But you've got to keep in mind, there are weirdos that try to have these conversations with your kids and fill them with lies. They want to brainwash your children.
No, they're trying to stop the brainwashing from happening by teaching stuff that we know to be true, to the best of our abilities, rather than relying on a book that people say was written by God, despite the fact the humans' names, the authors, are written in the book, and making claims that are just not possible to happen. And anything that you can't explain, you just say God did it, and think that that's a good enough answer when it's not. I mean, your religion has the exact same amount of validity than Islam does, which is practically zero validity at all.
Be willing to have a conversation, even though it may be difficult, to combat the lies that they're taught if they go to a public school. The Bible says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it."
In other words, brainwashing.
In a day and age where people say there's no right or wrong, there's no morality, Matt.
Oh God, don't you start on morality, I've covered that already.
In a day and age when there's perverts going all over the streets, flaunting their bodies in front of these kids.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to need a bit more context than that to address it.
In a day and age in which children are not considered humans, I'm talking about babies in the mother's wombs, they're not even considered human children.
Thank you for the extra context on at least that one. Finally, we get into the bulk of the argument where I'm actually the bad guy. My views on this sort of thing, because he's talking about abortion here basically, saying that if we allow abortion, we're saying that the child isn't a human, but in my view, it is. My views are probably more extreme than Matt's. I don't argue against abortion or for it, because my answer to it all can't be achieved. I spoke about it in other videos. Maybe I'll cover Matt's video on abortion soon. But basically, sperm is human DNA. Just because you put it in a vagina doesn't suddenly make it a baby. And in my view, sperm is alive. Sperm is a life form. When it merges with an egg, that doesn't suddenly make it alive. It's already alive. We've already said that, you can't become something you already are. So if sperm's already alive and the ova is already alive, when they merge together, they're still alive. So in my mind, abortion is killing something, yes. Is it a human baby? No. Will it be one? If you let it, yes. If we're going to say that you can't have an abortion because it's killing human DNA, then you also can't have sex, because the amount of sperm you release, only one could potentially survive, maybe two, maybe three if you're really unfortunate getting pregnant with 3 babies. Scary times. But ultimately, the millions of other sperm die, so we can't have sex anymore either. That's my view if we're going to take it to the fullest extreme. We can't just put an end to where we like a thing and then say, no, this is fine up until this point, and then we're going to stop it here because we now don't like it. When it comes to that sort of thing, it shouldn't be based on that, because based on this logic, we shouldn't have sex. And that is my view, essentially. I don't follow my own views, but that is my view. And women, essentially, in this case, also shouldn't have periods, which again would be silly to argue, but it results in the same sort of scenario. And it would be stupid of me to abide by my own thoughts on this when we account it in the view of abortion. Which is why I stay out of the debate, and why I find people like Matt Powell here silly when he starts saying, oh, but it's now alive when the sperm meets the egg. It doesn't make any sense to me to say that. So I am kind of arguing against Matt Powell here by being more extreme than Matt Powell. Feel free to have your own opinions. I'm not pushing my opinions to anyone on this topic. I'm going to leave it to the experts to decide when it comes to abortion, which is how I think a lot of things should be done. We shouldn't have religious nutters trying to influence laws or policies and politics and stuff like that. And we shouldn't have random YouTubers trying to do it either, like myself.
In this day and age, we must stand up while there is yet time, and we must be the voice for those who are suffering. A hero is somebody who stands up on behalf of those who are suffering, and that hero is willing to, in some cases, lay down his or her life for the protection of other people.
Okay, well that's not Matt, is it? He's not the hero saving people from suffering. He's causing a lot of the suffering. What is it you call a person like that? Oh yeah, a villain. Sometimes you might call them a wolf in sheep's clothing. Sorry, that might be the school system teaching me that humans can become animals, like you becoming a wolf. You know, I think he's got a point here.
When people say, oh, don't shelter your kids, don't worry about them. When they say to take the walls of protection down and just let people wreak havoc with your children, that should be a red flag to you.
This video is full of red flags, but suggesting that people should get as best of an unbiased education as you can should not be a red flag.
And you should not listen to them, because those people are just as delusional as the transgender advocates that we see all over the streets of America now.
Okay, so just forget for a moment anything you've heard about transgender people. Just for this scenario. A human being has a genuine issue. It's potentially medical, it's potentially mental. So, this human being goes to a doctor to get treated. Based on research in the past, conversion therapy has made things worse. We have many scientific studies which show this. Conversion therapy can be as simple as attempting to suppress the feelings so you don't complain about them anymore, all the way up to forced sex until you like it. So, converting the mind to the body doesn't work, but the human being is still suffering and requires treatment somehow. We can treat that person. Some of those treatments still include therapy. We can treat that person, and some people do regret it. About 1%, which is most certainly still a problem. But in comparison to most things, it's one of the best results we have in any form of medical scenarios. So basically, human beings have an issue. They go to a doctor. The doctor can solve it. But some people, unrelated to the issue, don't like it. Whatever the answer may be, we have it. So just leave them alone, let them exist, and let them have the treatment they need.
People often say, well, you're homeschooling your kids because you're just a conspiracy theorist. Well, the ultimate conspiracy is being taught in school. The conspiracy that we all descended from rats and that we all descended from jellyfish. It just gets more and more and more insane. And so that's why we really should do the best that we can to teach our kids at home.
So, the ultimate conspiracy is evolution, the one we have tremendous amounts of evidence for, the one we can actually observe in certain species of fruit flies, for example, and the things we have tremendous evidence for in the fossil record, where we were able to make predictions of things we could find, knowing that whales evolved from land animals, and then we're able to find and discover those transitional fossils. That doesn't sound like a conspiracy, that sounds like science, and how it's supposed to be done. And your better argument is God did it. Nothing more. That's it, isn't it? It's just God did it. There's no explanation. He made man from mud or dirt, and then all these animals fitted onto one single boat. But yet after they did that, they were able to diversify, which is still evolution. So even you believe in evolution with your omnipotent being that could make anything happen at any time, you still have to use evolution to explain the Bible, even if it is on a smaller scale. Anyway, I think that's enough of Matt Powell for today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to click on one of the 2 videos on screen right now, and I'll see you there. Also, consider subscribing if you stayed this long. Thanks for being awesome.